So this is for the would-be Hemi gurus out there. Why the Hemi lifters suffer from wear and eventually go bad. And it's the lifter trays, like I stated in my previous video. But to dispel the oil or lack of oil facts that some people have came up with, I'll go through the oil flow path in a Gen 3 Hemi engine. That'll really knock that one out of the park. If anybody else would have done this with basic oil flow path in their mind, they would have come up with, hey, the lifter gets a ton of oil. It would so have it. The lifters have a hole in the bottom of them. See that little nub right there? That's the end of a zip tie. If you haven't taken these lifters apart, before you do a lifter video, you should probably take these lifters apart and see that they have a hole right in the bottom of them. See where that zip tie is going through? That hole points right at the roller, guys. So you can end the video here, or you can listen to me explain the oil path and why people are wrong. The other reason is for the oil path portion is that the non-MDS lifters don't have a side oiling hole, because these do sit in a main oil galley like this. And in order for them to prioritize main oil galley pressure, you have to have a hole in them like the LS ones do, and they don't. The MDS ones actually do have a hole in them. It's to take down the lifter. This is a plunger that goes inside, and this is how you pop these in, and this plunger comes out. And that's how I emptied out this lifter, is by pushing those in and then pulling that plunger out after I pulled out the rest of the MDS guts. I also have a lifter taken apart that's a non-MDS lifter. See it? It's just no MDS, but the top part still has disc and a spring and a plunger and all the regular hydraulic lifter stuff inside. Anyways, let's go through the oil path, and then I can not make any more YouTube videos about Hemis. This is where the Hemi gets, this is where the push rods come through. So this is the top of the block, it's the intake side of the block and heads, right? So this is where the oil comes through into the heads in the Hemis. It's these two top ones right here and right here. And if we go to the other side, I use another zip tie, super scientific. This is how easy this stuff is that people don't do. So if it seems like I'm doing something that you've never seen before, you should probably stop watching videos that other people post that don't explain these basics in a certain way. So you can see right here, and I'll back this up so there's no trickery here. The zip tie is going all the way through. You know how long that zip tie is? I'll put it through again. Zip tie is going all the way through back over to that oiling hole coming from the block. So the oil comes through the main oil galley into that area, right? Directly beneath this in the block, those two holes are drilled to the main oil galley, which is where your bearings and your crank and everything get oil. Don't worry guys, this head's trash. All this stuff is trash. It's Hemi stuff, so it's always trash. Brand new, it's trash. Anyways, so the cross drilling here goes to that hole, and then you have another one right here that this rail is currently on top of. Okay, and then of course I'll show you the hole. See that hole? It's right there. That's where I have the zip tie poked through on this one, so you can see. So the why would you get oil to this rocker bar or rail? Well, it's because it's a removable oil galley. That's all they made with these rails. These two rails are oil galleys. They're the cylinder head and valve train oil galleys. So this sits on here, just like that one does, a lot like that. And the rail gets filled with oil. It's got caps on both ends. See, there's a cap there, if it'll focus. There's a cap on this end, and there's a cap on this end. And if you've ever taken these apart, you'll notice a ton of oil comes out of these, right? Yeah, well, that's because they're full of oil. So the oil gets in through these, around these bolts right here. Okay, it's kind of like a banjo bolt type setup. And then on the top, it's got these special washers. And actually, they're hard to take out because they have like a little retaining slash like sealing collar on them that sits in there. So that helps seal the oil pressure in. So these rails, these rocker rails, see full engine oil pressure. Okay, we're up to that now. This, if you're idling, this is seeing like 40 PSI, normal idle oil pressure. That's a lot of oil pressure and flow coming through this area. So we got oil coming through here. The next stop is gonna be through the rockers. It gets through the rockers a lot like Honda. Honda does the same thing to lubricate their rollers, which I'm a Honda guy, so this wasn't like rocket science for me, but for an old school 1950s, I don't know anything else, engine person, you probably don't understand how this works, but these holes here all have, and this is the hole right here, that's the hole for the bolt that bolts it down, so that's sealed. These holes here and this hole here all feed oil to the rocker itself. I got a rocker off. This is this rocker. So this rocker has a hole in it. See that little hole right there? Right there. There it is. And then there's a hole right there. And it's cross drilled. That's what that plug is. You'll see these in crankshafts, these little cross drilled plugs. They're just crimped in there. So rocker sits like this, whichever way it sits. As it's rocking, these holes are all feeding it oil pressure. And that oil pressure is feeding down through here, down the push rod. So you got a hole in the push rod, all the way through it. So the push rod is now filled with oil pressure, 40 PSI of oil pressure. The lifter's got a hole in it. It's full of oil pressure. The lifter has a hole in the bottom of it. The lifter has orifices right here so that you don't bleed all the oil pressure out. That's what these little holes are inside. Those are all oiling orifices. Hey, there's a check valve because they want it, when it shuts down, they don't want the hydraulic lifter to bleed all its oil out of it. Non-MDS lifters have the same oil restrictor, okay? So you would put an oil restrictor in something that bleeds out. So this lifter sees full oil pressure and it bleeds that sucker out right, directly, straight onto the roller. I mean, what more proof do you need that it's not an oiling issue? Splash lubrication is not something these engine manufacturers depend on. Splash lubrication from the crank is not something that they care about. They are not going to depend on it for lubricating lifters, obviously. They put the cam away from the crank. Not only that, at idle, you would be pumping out, I don't know, what do you guys think an oil pump, an engine oil pump pumps at 10 gallons a minute at idle? So you're telling me all that oil that's bleeding out of all the rod journals, slinging all over the engine at idle at 500 RPM is what? Not hitting the cam. So it's getting splash lubrication anyway. All I'm telling you is it's not depending on splash lubrication because it's injecting the oil straight into the lifter and then straight onto the roller. It's not oil. Oiling is not the issue. It's the trace. It's the lifter trace. Follow the oil path. If you have oil pressure, guess what? All this is full and you're injecting oil onto the roller. You have to be, or else you wouldn't have oil pressure. Anyways, it's enough Hemi stuff.